Before Messi lifted his first Ballon d'Or, before Guardiola's Barcelona redefined perfection, before tiki-taka mesmerized the world, there was a man with a vision. By the end of the 1987-88 season, FC Barcelona was unraveling. They'd finished 6th in La Liga, crashed out of the UEFA Cup, and suffered a full-blown internal rebellion, the Hesperia Mutiny, where senior players publicly turned against club president Josep Luis Núñez. The crisis wasn't just about poor results. It was about a club that had lost its identity. And then, in 1988, Johan Cruyff returned. Not as a player, but as a prophet. He didn't arrive with just a formation or a system. He arrived with an idea that football could be played with intelligence, with joy, and with purpose. Football is simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing of all. Cruyff. He wasn't there to fix Barcelona's defense. He came to fix their mindset. Barcelona didn't just hire a coach. They handed the keys to a philosopher, and nothing would ever be the same again. To understand what Johan Cruyff brought to Barcelona, you have to go back, not to Spain, but to the canals of Amsterdam. In the late 1960s and early 70s, Ajax became the epicenter of a football revolution, and Cruyff was its heartbeat. He wasn't just part of total football, he was its clearest expression. Under Rinus Michels, Cruyff was introduced to a philosophy where the game was played with the mind before the feet. No position was fixed. Players interchanged roles. Space was created, not found. It was a system built on intelligence, anticipation, and constant motion, where every pass had a purpose, and every player had to understand the game as a whole. Cruyff thrived in this environment. He didn't move to run. He moved to orchestrate. He didn't just see the game. He saw the next phase of it. Together, Michels and Cruyff led Ajax to 3 consecutive European Cups, 1971, 1972, 1973. That same philosophy then carried over to the Dutch national team, who reached the 1974 World Cup final, dazzling the world with their fluid style, even if they fell just short of the title. It was in Amsterdam that Cruyff stopped being just a player. He became a thinker, a tactician, a football revolutionary. And the ideas born in Ajax's red and white would one day become the blueprint for Barcelona's transformation. The story of Barcelona before Johan Cruyff isn't one of failure. It's one of confusion. From Bernd Schuster to Diego Maradona, Gary Lineker to Steve Archibald, Camp Nou had hosted world-class talent in the 1980s. But for all the individual brilliance, there was no lasting identity, no philosophy, no guiding idea behind the football. Between 1980 and 1988, Barcelona cycled through 6 different managers. Each brought a different system, a new promise, a different shape. But no one stayed long enough to build conviction. The club would play possession one season, direct football the next. The pendulum swung, but there was no compass. Meanwhile, in Madrid, Real were thriving. The La Quinta del Buitre generation, Butragueño, Sanchís, Michel, Martín Vázquez, and Pardeza, led them to 5 straight La Liga titles between 1985 to 1990. While Madrid built on continuity, Barcelona responded with short-term fixes. Even La Masia, established in 1979, was still embryonic. It had a roof, a name, and a few hopefuls, but not yet a unifying method. The talent was raw. The idea wasn't there. Barcelona didn't just need a coach, they needed a compass. And when Johan Cruyff arrived, he didn't bring a system. He brought a question. Why follow the game when you can define it? The players were there. The potential was real. Cruyff came to turn fragments into a formula. You play football with your head. Your legs are there to help you. Johan Cruyff. When Cruyff arrived at Barcelona, he didn't just tweak tactics. He tore up the old rulebook. Out went the rigid 4-4-2s, the conservative marking schemes, and the fear-first football. In their place came a 3-4-3 formation, built not on rigidity, but on understanding. It wasn't a shape. It was a system of belief. Players weren't trapped in positions. They were empowered with responsibilities. Fullbacks became ball players, not just defenders. Wingers stayed wide, creating constant width. And midfielders, especially the central pivot, became the brain of the operation. That pivot? A 19-year-old named Pep Guardiola. He didn't fit the typical mold. He wasn't quick. He wasn't physical. But Cruyff saw something else: intelligence, vision, and composure. He believed Pep could be the metronome, the one who set the tempo and held the entire system together. The result? Barcelona played like a chessboard in motion, triangles appearing and reappearing with dizzying precision. The team pressed high, passed short, and always thought one step ahead. And in May 1992 at Wembley Stadium, it all came together. A dramatic extra-time goal by Ronald Koeman sealed a 1-0 win over Sampdoria, and Barcelona were crowned European champions for the first time in club history. The press called them the Dream Team. But the dream wasn't about flash or fame. It was about proving an idea: that football could be intelligent, expressive, and still win at the highest level. Cruyff didn't just build a team. He engineered a movement, one that would echo through the decades. When Johan Cruyff looked at La Masia, he didn't just see a youth academy. He saw the foundation of everything he wanted Barcelona to become. Originally established in 1979, La Masia had already begun producing talent, but it lacked cohesion. Under Cruyff, that changed. He didn't just want technically gifted players, he wanted thinkers, decision-makers, players who could read the game, move in harmony, and use the ball as a weapon of control. So he rewired the entire system. Training sessions were standardized across age groups. From the under-10s to the senior squad, players learned the same positional principles. They were taught to play from the back, to move into space, and to think multiple steps ahead. Every pass had intent. Every movement had logic. There were no long clearances. Defenders passed like midfielders. Midfielders scanned before receiving. Forwards initiated the press. It wasn't about physicality, it was about understanding. And the results didn't take long to surface. By the early 2000s, a new breed of player, raised on Cruyff's philosophy, began to rise. Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol, Messi, Busquets, Piqué. They weren't just products of an academy, they were the embodiment of an idea. La Masia, under Cruyff's influence, had become more than a training center. It became the intellectual heart of Barcelona's golden era. Cruyff didn't have to coach them all himself. He had already shaped the way they saw the game. Every great philosophy needs a disciple. For Johan Cruyff, that disciple was Pep Guardiola. As a young player at La Masia, Guardiola stood out. Not for his speed or strength, but for his intelligence. Cruyff saw something unique, a brain wired for football at its most conceptual level. In 1990, he promoted the 19-year-old to the first team and made him the central pivot of his 3-4-3 system, the conductor at the heart of the pitch. On the field, Pep controlled the tempo. Off it, he absorbed everything. The drills, the diagrams, the philosophy. Years later, in 2008, Guardiola returned to Camp Nou, not as a player, but as the manager. At just 37, he was tasked with leading a senior side in flux. It could have been a gamble, but for those who knew Cruyff's ideas, it felt like a natural evolution. Pep didn't replicate Cruyff's system, he refined it. The results were breathtaking. From 2009 to 2012, Barcelona became the gold standard of club football. Tiki-taka, short passing, fluid triangles, relentless control, high pressing, defending as an act of aggression, false nines, Messi roaming deeper to disrupt defensive structures, La Liga, Copa del Rey, Champions League, Club World Cup. Barcelona won everything, not by overpowering teams, but by outthinking them. And through it all, Guardiola never claimed the blueprint as his own. He pointed to his mentor and said, "Cruyff painted the chapel. I only restored it." This wasn't just a tactical inheritance. It was living proof that one man's vision, born in Amsterdam, planted in Barcelona, could shape football for generations. Johan Cruyff didn't just lead teams, he changed how they thought. After stepping away from the Camp Nou in 1996, his impact didn't fade. In the early 2000s and 10s, he returned to Ajax, where he pushed for sweeping internal reforms, from restructuring the youth academy to aligning the club's identity around the same values he once lived by: technical development, positional play, and intelligence over strength. It wasn't always welcomed in boardrooms, but his vision took root. Again. Beyond the pitch, Cruyff founded the Johan Cruyff Foundation, using sport as a tool for inclusion and opportunity. Through this, he helped children with disabilities experience freedom and joy through football, proving that for him, the game was always bigger than the scoreline. His influence also lived through writing, books, essays, and interviews where he broke football down to its simplest truths. He mentored players and future coaches alike, often without fanfare, just clarity and conviction. And yet his most enduring tribute isn't made of bronze. It's on the pitch, in the pause before a pass, in the calmness under pressure, in the triangles, the movement, the belief that beauty and victory don't have to compete. Yes, his statue now stands outside Camp Nou, but the real monument to Cruyff is built every weekend, in the way the game is played. He didn't want applause. He wanted to be understood. Football to him was language, movement, imagination. Not just how you score, but how you see. And in an era where football evolves at breakneck speed, Cruyff's philosophy still speaks softly and clearly. He was more than a man. He was a mindset. He was the mind behind modern football.